A cowboy who spoke to no one, until she answered his silence. The plains stretched out like a wound that never healed, raw, endless, and aching beneath a sky the color of bruised copper. The wind moved slow across the land, carrying with it the taste of dust and silence, the kind that settles deep in a man's bones until even memory forgets how to speak. Old fence posts leaned like tired sentries along a road no one rode anymore. A tumbleweed rolled by, aimless and determined, chased by the whisper of a storm that would never come. The sun hung low, not golden, but tired, bleeding its last light across the dry ribs of the earth. Somewhere in that silence, a raven cried out and the sound fell flat, swallowed whole by the emptiness. The land didn't echo anymore. It just listened, to ghosts, to the weight of years, to the slow heartbeat of a world that once believed in something. Far off, a cabin sat half-sunken into the dirt, its roof bowed like an old man's back. Smoke no longer rose from its chimney, only the wind moved through it now, sighing through the cracks like a voice remembering how to grieve. And through that lonely horizon rode a single figure, slow, steady, and silent, a man who hadn't spoken to anyone in years. His horse carried him as if both had forgotten what direction meant, moving only because stopping felt too much like dying. The land was empty. But sometimes emptiness waits for an echo. He found her where the creek bent around the stones, half in water, half in shadow, like the earth itself was trying to hold her. Her dress was torn, dust caked along her skin, and one hand still clutched a silver locket as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the living. The cowboy reined in his horse, the leather creaking in the quiet. For a long while he just sat there, watching, unsure if she was real or one more ghost the desert had conjured. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of her breath, shallow, trembling. That was enough. He dismounted slow, boots sinking into the damp edge of the creek. No words. He crouched beside her, dipped his hand into the cold water, and let it spill gently over her face. Her lashes fluttered, once, twice, and then she tried to move. He laid a steady hand on her shoulder, not to stop her, but to promise she didn't need to run. From his saddlebag, he tore a strip of cloth, pressed it against the wound at her side. The blood had already dried to rust, the color of the horizon behind them. She winced, but didn't turn away. He lifted her then, careful, like holding something made of memory, and placed her across his horse. No sound between them except the creak of leather and the sigh of the land as they rode toward the dying light. When she stirred again, her voice came small, cracked, like wind through reeds. "Why'd you stop?" He didn't answer. Because some silences are kinder than words. The cabin was more shadow than wood, walls patched with old boards, the scent of rain dust and pine smoke lingering like a half-remembered dream. He laid her on a cot near the window, where the last thread of daylight bled through. For hours, the only sound was the slow rasp of her breathing and the crackle of the fire he built, small and steady. He cooked without looking at her, beans and cornbread, plain as the land itself. When he set the tin plate beside her, she hesitated, watching his hands. They were rough, scarred, but gentle, as if he feared even the sound of the metal might hurt her. She ate in silence. He didn't join her. He just waited until she finished, then took the plate back without a word. Days passed like that, quiet as prayer. She began to move again, limping through the cabin, sometimes stepping out to sit by the door when the sun turned gold across the hills. He'd be there too, mending a bridle, splitting wood, never asking. Sometimes she'd hand him a piece of rope or pass the cup of coffee closer to his reach. Small things, but enough to shift the air between them. At night, when the wind howled against the shutters, he'd light the lantern and leave it burning on her side of the room. She never asked why. He never said. But every evening, when he set the flame to the wick, their shadows met softly on the wall, two outlines learning how not to disappear. And somewhere in that quiet, between the sound of fire and breath, suspicion turned into something that almost resembled peace. One evening, the rain came, rare and soft, tapping against the roof like a memory trying to return. The fire burned low, shadows curling slow around the room. She sat by the window, the silver locket open in her palm. Inside, the face of a child, faded, smiling, stared back at the years that had stolen him away. He saw it when he brought in the wood. Didn't ask. Just watched her thumb trace the tiny photograph again and again, as if touch could turn back time. Finally, she spoke, not to him, not really. They took him south. Said he'd have a better chance. Her voice trembled. He didn't. He didn't answer. Just nodded once, a silent acknowledgement, the kind that means I know that kind of loss. He rolled up his sleeve to throw another log into the fire, and she saw the mark on his forearm, a burned scar, long healed but still angry against the skin. What happened? She asked, almost whispering. He looked at the flame instead of her. Fire caught the barn. Wife inside. The words came out like gravel, rough, unpracticed, too old for his throat. For a long time, neither moved. The rain thickened, drumming the earth like a heartbeat too heavy to bear. Then she closed the locket, stood, and placed it gently on the shelf beside his old revolver, two relics of lives that refused to die quietly. No promises were spoken that night. But when he set another log on the fire, her hand brushed his, light as breath. And for the first time, neither pulled away. It was near dawn when the sound came, not thunder, but hooves. Slow at first, then gathering like a storm with a purpose. He was already on the porch, rifle in hand, before the dust settled beyond the ridge. Two riders. Long coats. Hard eyes that didn't blink against the wind. She stepped behind him, instinctive, her breath sharp with fear. He didn't look back, didn't need to. The way the air changed told him everything. The men dismounted, spurs biting the earth. Morning, one called out. We're tracking a runaway. Said she might have passed this way. White dress, scar on her side. You seen her? The cowboy's hand tightened on the rifle. He could lie. He could hand her over. Either way, something inside him would die again. The world waited, the land, the wind, even the sky seemed to hold its breath. He spat into the dirt, eyes cold as the barrel he carried. No one's been through here in months. The men studied him, saw the quiet danger in his stance, the kind that comes from a man who's already lost everything once. After a moment too long, they turned their horses. One lingered, gaze drifting toward the cabin door, then rode on without a word. When the dust finally cleared, he let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. She stood in the doorway, tears mixing with the ash on her cheek. They'll come back, she said softly. He nodded, setting the rifle down beside her. Then they'll find two of us. And in that choice, not loud, not grand, the silence between them became a vow. The night came soft after the storm, cool, washed clean, the kind of quiet that feels like forgiveness. The fire had burned low, its last coals breathing a faint red glow that painted her face in warmth. He sat across from her, whittling a small piece of cedar, each stroke of the knife slow, steady, like a heartbeat that had learned patience again. She watched him for a long time, eyes tracing the rhythm of his hands. No words passed, there didn't need to be any. The air between them was no longer heavy, it just was, gentle and alive. When he finished, he held out what he'd made, a small carved horse, smooth and simple, shaped from the same wood that built the cabin walls. Thought it might keep you company, he said, his voice low, rough with something softer than dust. She took it carefully, turning it in her palms as though afraid it might vanish. Then, without a word, she reached for the locket on the shelf, the one she hadn't opened since the night she showed it to him, and pressed it into his hand. He'd have liked you, she whispered. He didn't speak. Just closed his fingers around it, thumb resting over the metal like a prayer. When their hands touched, neither pulled away. The fire cracked once, sending a spark into the darkness, and they both looked toward it, the kind of moment that feels small but holds everything that matters. Outside, the wind moved through the grass in a hush, like the land itself was finally exhaling. And for the first time, the silence between them wasn't empty, it was home. The plains stretched wide beneath a softer sky, the same land, the same endless wind, but something had changed in the way it breathed. The cabin still leaned into the earth, but smoke rose from its chimney now, curling upward like a quiet hymn. He stood by the fence line, fixing what time had broken, while she hung laundry in the sun, the white cloth swaying gentle, catching the light like surrender. Somewhere between the wind and the warmth, laughter, low, fragile, real, drifted across the yard. The land listened again. Evening came slow, painting the world in gold instead of rust. He turned toward her as she looked up, their eyes meeting with the calm of two souls who had already survived the worst. The wind moved through them, same as before, only now, it carried something new. The dust still wandered the plains, but this time, it carried their laughter too.